From fitness routines to mental resilience, navigating personal goals to tackling burnout, we all need a little help with the tricky work of being human. Well, that is where the Life Kit podcast from NPR comes in. If you're looking to move with more intention or just need some thoughtful guidance on living better, Life Kit delivers strategies to help you make meaningful, sustainable change. This is much more than just a show that gives you practical advice. It gives you the support and the thinking you need to navigate some of life's trickiest decisions. For instance, we're headed into the fall. Those of us with kids or those of us in school are going back to school. This can be a pretty tricky time. Well, Life Kit has a number of episodes on how to support your kids, from setting up routines to dealing with smartphones to just trying to emotionally connect with them as they go through the tricky stuff that is being a kid and a teenager. And look, I listened to all these episodes. None of them provide a one-stop miracle cure to all of life's problems. That's not how life works. But when I listen to Life Kit, I feel more informed, more assured in my decisions, a little closer to having some of the tricky things figured out. As a parent, that's basically all I could ask for. That's not to say there aren't some episodes that are really helpful at a practical level. For instance, there's a great recent episode with tips for planning a vacation, and that one was quite useful. I think I saved myself a decent chunk of change after listening to it. So if you need help tackling common issues like relationships, finance, parenting, your career, and something that gives you a game plan that you can implement right away, listen now to the Life Kit podcast from NPR.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Hello and welcome to This Day, a history show from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avergan. This day, September 2015, after more than 100 years of being officially named by the federal government Mt McKinley, Alaska's tallest peak was renamed Denali. The paperwork was signed by Interior Secretary Sally Jewell, who did it right in time to time it for a visit to Alaska by President Barack Obama. This was after decades and decades of debate and conversation about renaming the mountain, not for a president from Ohio, but instead for its traditional Kuyukon name. So, let's talk about the politics that went into the name change of the tallest mountain in North America, and of course the politics that went into naming it back from McKinley just this year by the Trump administration. Here, as always, Nicole Hemmer of Vanderbilt and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
So, let me give a little background on, well, first off, I guess we should get this out of the way. Have any of us climbed Denali? No? That's a no?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I actually haven't been to Alaska. Am I the only one who hasn't been?
No, I haven't been either. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, definitely.
I have, and semi-notoriously got lost on the side of a mountain in Alaska, but it was not Denali. And as much as I like climbing, and I've climbed some of the other big mountains out there, this seems very daunting.
It's very tall.
It's very tall. And in fact, it is. Let me pull up my Denali facts. It is 20,310 feet tall. So not the tallest mountain in the world, but it is considered one of the hardest to climb. And it is kind of on that list of the 7 summits, and it's the 3rd tallest of those. And it has 2 peaks, South Summit, North Summit. The South Summit is the one that climbers aim for because that is the true peak. The first verified ascent was in 1913 on a team led by a man named Hudson Stuck, which is just, if you're going to invent Explorer in 1913, you call him Hudson Stuck. That's great.
Fantastic
Yeah.
name.
It's a great name.
And at that time, it was not called Mt McKinley, and it was, its traditional name is Denali, various spellings, the local languages and indigenous groups, the Yukon, the Tanana, the Kuskokwim. And I looked up some of the translations for what its traditional names mean, and it's basically the tall one or the big mountain, which is a good name.
Great name.
What mountain?
Does what it needs
what
to
mountain
do.
are you talking about? Oh, I'm talking about the tall one. You look around, there it is. Everyone knows exactly what you're talking
Very
about.
self-explanatory.
Yet, somehow, the tall one turns into Mt McKinley, of all people. How does that happen?
Oh my gosh, this is the craziest story as to how you get a name for a mountain. So there is a guy by the name of William Dickey who is climbing the mountain in 1896. And he actually is born in New Hampshire, but he's a Seattleite. And as he's climbing this mountain, he gets news that William McKinley of Ohio is running for the presidency, that he's going to be the nominee for the presidency. And as he gets this news while he's on the mountain, he thinks, okay, that's a great idea for this mountain. Why don't we name this mountain peak after McKinley? Which is insane because he's not even the president.
This is the key crazy fact to me. McKinley was just a nominee for president when someone decides to name this thing after him. He, of course, becomes president, but still, my gosh,
It's jumping the gun a bit.
It is absolutely jumping the gun. And again, I still kind of question, who are you, Dickey? Who are you to even proclaim this?
Also, jumping the gun is actually a bad metaphor because McKinley will be shot 4 years later.
We don't have show me Mount Dukakis, We don't name...
It's a very small mountain.
Yeah, we don't name these things after nominees. But can we just linger on this a little bit? Because when you read the reports on the part of William Dickey, it sounds like the news that McKinley is running against William Jennings Bryan is like this massive news that reaches the wilderness and gets everyone excited. I mean, he doesn't seem to have some deep connection, does he? Or is it just like any news that reaches the wilderness is going to get you fired up?
Well, this is really important news, actually, because the thing that had brought Dickey to Alaska was he was gold prospecting. Yes. And the big debate in the 1896 campaign is, sorry for everyone who's about to fall asleep, bimetallism. Yeah. And this question of whether you're going to have gold and silver as a standard. And so he has all of these people around him who are silver miners and who are like, oh, we really want Bryan. And he's like, no, we like the gold bug. We're going to go for McKinley. We're going to name this mountain after the gold guy.
Never mind.
That is the impetus, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
And we have done an episode that I don't think people fell asleep on, bimetallism. We did it by way of The Wizard of Oz, but yes, it is a huge issue at that time, and I think the gold connection really is the reason that it gets named.
But never mind that McKinley has never visited Alaska. It's not as though he was born there. He has stomping on his roots. He has no connection with the mountain whatsoever.
But nevertheless, guy from Ohio all of a sudden has a mountain named after him, and it's, obviously it's just a random guy who says we're going to call this Mount McKinley, but it gets officially codified in 1917. Congress passes the act. Woodrow Wilson signs it. It is Public Act number 353, an act to establish Mt McKinley National Park in the territory of Alaska, with Mt McKinley at the center of it. And then it just sets off almost a century of grumbling, I guess.
Grumbling's a good word for it. I mean, in some ways, the people in Alaska just keep calling it Denali.
Yes.
Yep.
But they are also a little annoyed because they're like, McKinley doesn't mean anything to us. We don't care about this. And so they want to change the name. And this comes up in the 1970s. And in the 1970s, as this discussion starts to break out about come on, we got to pass a bill and rename this Denali, which is what the people of Alaska want. They request that the name be changed. The Alaska legislature does. And in swoops, Ohio Congressman Ralph Regula. He represents Canton, which is a place that McKinley spent a lot of his life. And he's a McKinley stan. And he is like, no, you can't change the name. I'm not going to let you change the name of this mountain. But he is one lone congressman. What can he do? What he can do is shenanigans. Just shenanigans. So there's this regulation. There's a part of the federal government that's in charge of naming things, the U.S. Board of Geographic Names, the one we all know and love.
Oh, yeah.
And it has this regulation that it can't consider any name change proposal if there's congressional legislation relating to the name that's pending. So what Regula does is every 2 years, he comes into Congress and he presents a bill. Sometimes it's an appropriations bill for the Interior Department. Sometimes it's just a standalone bill where he's like, petition to not change the name of Mount McKinley. And even though this doesn't get debated, that's never a vote, because it's in the hopper, it's under debate in Congress. And so they can't change the name.
This guy sounds like a real jerk.
Just saying. He's a real jerk.
He's looking out for his constituents. Come on.
Who cares?
Is he looking out for his constituents?
Or he's looking out for his
dead.
state, I suppose. No, I mean, look, Look, I think we all kind of land on it should probably be called something a little more relevant to where it is, and there's a nice traditional name there that people are already calling it that anyway. But I do think there is an interesting element of this story where you get kind of different constituencies, and I love the idea that like all of a sudden Alaska and Ohio have beef with each other when it's like, could you pick two more random states to like feud for decades? But because of this one mountain, now all of a sudden, you know, the like Alaska senators and the Ohio senators and the congressmen and Congress people are like, you know, going behind each other's back and negotiating, trying to get the ear of the president. It's very funny that these two states all of a sudden are cast in this showdown.
Agreed, and
yeah,
it's just greedy.
It is.
It's greedy.
It is.
There's so many Ohio presidents. There's so many.
That's true.
Why do they have to colonize Alaska with McKinley when they
and there is a lot of stuff named for
so
McKinley.
little.
That's true.
I mean, it's really unnecessary. All of this is really, you want to be like regular. You have nothing else to do. Nothing. No other laws you want to pass than this name change. It's, crazy.
Hey there, I have exciting podcast-related news, Radiotopia-related news. Home cooking is coming back for a new season. I think you probably know what home cooking is, but it is the show with the esteemed chef Samin Nosrat and, of course, Radiotopia's own Rishikesh Hirway, the person behind Song Exploder and West Wing Weekly and so many other great projects. This is Rishi and Samin's cooking podcast. Samin has a new book coming out. Her previous one was the best-selling Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Her new book is on the way, and to help celebrate, and just because they love talking to us and making home cooking, there is a whole batch of new episodes of the best cooking show on the planet. Rishi and Samin will try and help you answer a lot of your home cooking dilemmas, like did you get a strange vegetable in your produce box and can't quite figure out what to do with it? Or maybe you're trying to figure out the secret to what made a long-lost family recipe so delicious. They and listeners from around the world are here to help with all of your cooking questions. This is such a fun show and very informative. Home Cooking returns on August 29th with new episodes every other week through the end of the year. Home Cooking was recently named one of the 100 best podcasts of all time by Time Magazine. It is the podcast that will make you hungry and will make you laugh. So go ahead and subscribe to Home Cooking. I'll be listening. I hope you will too. Well, folks, it happened. It's here. Fall is in full swing, and it is the perfect time to refresh your wardrobe with pieces that feel as good as they look. Luckily, Quince makes it easy to look polished, stay warm, and save big without compromising on quality. I am turning to Quince for all my fall staples that actually last. You've heard me talk about Quince on this show. You've heard me talk a lot about linen. Linen time, though, is over. It is now time for wool, denim, and even, dare I say, cashmere. Look, I never thought cashmere would be part of my life, but with Quince, there are actually pieces like cashmere sweaters and scarves and hoodies that are really nice and affordable. A 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater from $50. There's washable silk tops and skirts, perfectly tailored denim, all at prices that continue to blow me away. So keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/thisday for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/thisday to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/thisday.
But the thing is, it works. And also, we should do a little hat tip to Jimmy Carter, who's always the peacemaker. He's like, okay, I've got a compromise. Let's rename the park Denali, and we'll keep the mountain Mt McKinley. And so he signs this into legislation towards the end of his only term. But the people of Alaska are like, no, we want the mountain to be called Denali. But they can't because Regula is in office until 2009. 34 years he keeps up this fight.
Yeah, and so a lot of this does start to kind of loosen up and change in 2009 when he retires, and the debate kind of bursts back into the open. But of course, Tim Ryan from Ohio sort of picks up the same sort of mantle and wants to fight against change. But I will say, as we get into the 2010s, there is also an element here that I can't imagine is not part of this. That like Ohio is a really important state politically, right? Mm-hmm. And so, as absurd as it is, and maybe as like much as Obama, now president, would want to enact this change, like he can't afford to piss off Ohio. Ohio is a very important state, obviously a very important swing state in those elections, but also John Boehner is Speaker of the House, and like crossing Ohio, getting on Ohio's bad side. So, there's definitely like, to my eye, a solid decade or so here where it's just like, because Ohio is in the crosshairs of American politics, this particular issue doesn't get addressed.
And there's something worth thinking about here because, this is tagged to 2015 when the name gets changed. That's basically when Ohio moves from a swing state to a red state.
Yeah.
And
so
when
this might have cost Democrats a state.
Wait, say that again? You think
No way.
in 20
This happens the year before Ohio becomes a solid red state? I don't know.
in 2016? Oh, well, this is a very interesting
their ballot
theory.
box like, take that.
They're like, I'm going to get you back for Denali.
But clearly, I mean, I was thinking, the interesting thing about 2015 is that Obama is probably in his like no F's left kind of mode where he's just like, screw it, I'm just going to do these things. And, Obama had campaigned a fair amount on improving Native American lives and Native American relations. I don't think he fully fulfilled many of those promises, but this is certainly part of that. And, he's
the first president to visit a Native American reservation in a long time.
And also, it's worth pointing out, like, it's not like Alaska is totally without agency here. I mean, Lisa Murkowski is a very important senator, and she picks this up and she advocates a lot. And in 2015, she's kind of like, hey, Ohio, like, you have enough. We need to.
It's time.
It's time.
It's been 100 years.
So, as I said, in the summer of 2015, Sally Jewell is the Interior Secretary and signs legislation to rename it Denali. And John Boehner from Ohio objects. And, at this point, the press goes and finds this Congressman Regula, who's now 90, and he talks about Obama being a dictator because he changed his name.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Those are strong words.
Nothing more dictatorial than allowing a state to name its own mountain.
Yeah. That's the fact that he's 90 and he's still holding on to this says to me that, like, I don't know, maybe he's got more investment than we really know about. Maybe he's like a McKinley descendant or something. Who knows? But that kind of like allegiance to a name till the end of your life makes no sense.
We all need to care about something as much as this guy cared about not changing the name of that mountain.
Not only that, but I think it's interesting that all 13 members of Ohio's congressional delegation signs a letter of complaint saying that, like, what Obama did is quote unquote troubling and that William McKinley's legacy has been tarnished by a political stunt, which, it's a bit much.
First off,
it's a bit much.
Someone defined for me the phrase William McKinley's legacy. There's an assumption.
A couple of possums.
There's an assumption in that for non-Ohioans that, there's this untarnished legacy or that could be tarnished. And, I suppose that this is actually the most notable thing for most Americans about William McKinley, and all of a sudden it's off the radar. But yes, there was a slightly more sane response from the curator of the McKinley Museum in Ohio, who said, we have no problem whatsoever with Alaskans. We are happy for them. It's their mountain. It's just a little bit sad that it's not named after our guy anymore. That is a very reasonable response. Yes. That person got invited to take a tour of Denali. Yes. But now we get into 2015, 2016, into the Trump era. And Trump picks up on this and at one point calls it a great insult to Ohio and vows to reverse the decision if elected. So, there isn't a ton of TikTok here. He just kind of like eventually this administration, they do it. But clearly this fits into this larger thing we've seen over the last 10 years about names, renaming, and so forth. So how do you see this? How do you see that fitting in?
I mean, I see this as this becomes a part of like the culture wars when we think about taking off the names of great white men and replacing them or having people of color or Native American names or any other, sort of pick a person that stands out historically from a marginalized group. Erasing those names has become a part of the campaign. Just sort of like, I don't know, I see this in a way as kind of like the Lost Cause 2.0, where people are like taking these names that have been either problematic because they're named after a Confederate soldier or something like that, or just named after a white person just for the sake of uplifting and glorifying white supremacy. It becomes one of those political footballs, and Trump picks that up and runs with it.
It's just such this core white populist grievance that is at the heart of Trumpism, but now at the heart of the entire MAGA movement. I was listening to Kellie yesterday, and she went on an extensive rant about all of the things that have been taken from white people, including Hermione Granger. And
Hermione, wait, I missed the Hermione one.
That Hermione Granger was played by a black girl in the play version of one of the Harry Potter things, and that Snow White was played by a Latina, and she's like, look at what they have taken from us. And Mt McKinley is part of that. Like, look at what they have taken from us. This mountain we don't know anything about or care anything about, but the name has been replaced, and that is a loss that needs to be avenged. Yeah. And I feel like that is the politics.
This is also Megyn Kelly's MO, like the Santa Claus, Ariel.
Oh, yeah.
Girl, she was like, in Bridgerton, they took real white people and made them black.
Oh, my gosh.
Did they, though? Or are those also fictional characters?
Not to belabor the point or even try and parse the kind of absurdity or the bigotry of that logic, but this is a slightly different case in that this place had a name before, right? It's not like, we want to name it, quote unquote, for some other woke character or whatever. It's more like reverting to the name, and moreover the name that like everyone is already using, and so
will likely continue to use no matter what the name is called.
And I think like that's a really important point as we wrap up to lay out that like all of this fighting over naming matters and is symbolic and has a real effect, but also like it's important to remember that on the ground people are often going to just do what they do, and they're going to keep calling something what they want, and like And that works in both directions. If they want to go out of their way to call it something that's offensive to someone else, then they'll do that. You know, I mean, I'm thinking of the Washington football team, which a bunch of people go out of their way to still call the previous racist name. But a lot of people are just like, whatever, keep it moving. Like, it's a team. It doesn't really matter.
And which the president is also trying to get them to change back.
Yes, yeah. One final tidbit here. This executive order to revert the name was actually one of those like very first ones. Trump signs it on January 20th, 2025. It's in that flurry of executive orders that he signed in the first day. 3 weeks later, Murkowski introduces a bill to restore the name Denali to the federal government. So now we're back to where we were, and we're in another back and forth. One final tidbit. We managed to do a whole episode about Alaska without mentioning Sarah Palin, but I will point out that Sarah Palin has two nieces, one named McKinley and the other named Denali. So there you go. Compromise. Split the baby. Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone out there has climbed Denali, we want to hear from you. Or maybe you called it McKinley when you climbed it. I want to hear about it and maybe convince us to do a little live taping at the top of the mountain.
Yeah, a little road trip.
Yeah, 20,000 feet up. Okay, we'll do it. Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kellie Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
Radiotopia. From